Hi everyone, my name is JHatter, and I'm a senior at WM15 High School, and for my project, I decided to focus on neonatology, specifically for my research, how to save a child's life before he or she is even born through the prevention of environmental birth defects. I chose this topic because I'm actually very interested in neonatal nursing as a career path. This stems from my love of helping people. Which is why I do things like volunteer with the rescue squad. It also stems children, which is why I do things like volunteer at the primary school every day, helping teach kindergarteners in music class. And both of these put together, neonatal nursing seemed kind of like a good balance of the two, something that would fit me very well. And I was hoping through doing this project and getting to actually intern in the NICU and do things that a neonatal nurse would be doing, I would kind of solidify whether or not it was indeed a career for me. For my research, I asked the question, what are the major environmental causes of birth defects and premature or stillbirths, and what can we as future parents and members of the community do to limit or prevent these problems? As I started my research, I found out that 1 in every 33 babies is born with some sort of birth defect. These can range anything from obvious physical abnormalities, like a cleft lip or palate shown in the picture, or they could be something more internal, something that affects the child's major organs or affects their growth and development. The worst of these, of course, are the ones that cause death of the child even within a few hours of birth or sometimes a few years down the road. I also found in my research that 10% of defects are environmental birth defects, meaning that they are caused by something that the mother or father does or is exposed to before, or in the case of the father, before pregnancy, before conception. And 10% out of 1 in 33 doesn't seem like a huge number. However, they are arguably the most preventable type of birth defect. And so anything that we can do to work to save these lives is definitely a step in the right direction. So, one of the most well-known environmental causes of a defect is smoking. If a mom smokes during pregnancy, or if a father smokes before his child is even conceived, it can cause abnormalities for the child. And even if it's not a birth defect that it causes, it can cause the child to be born prematurely, which in and of itself can cause a lot of problems. Other major causes, well-known causes, are alcohol. If you drink a lot, that can cause alcohol fetal syndrome, which has a little bit of abnormality to the child's face, but the majority of the problems are internal. The child has developmental problems. Excuse me. They don't develop as quickly as other kids. They're never as independent as kids without these problems, and they just have issues growing up and developing, and they're always behind a little bit as far as compared to other people their age. Drugs are also environmental defects, and not necessarily just illegal drugs. Even some prescription drugs can cause a lot of problems for a child, and so it's important for mom to know, even medicines that she might normally take on a daily basis, it's important to know how those will affect her kid, because in some ways, even those everyday drugs can have a bad effect on the child. One of the lesser known causes is stress. Stress has a similar effect on a child as alcohol, causes a lot of developmental problems. Stress can stem from the workplace. Stress can also stem from home life or from the baby's father. or any family members. So it's important to be a good environment for mom, so mom can keep stress down, because if she's being negatively impacted by stress, that in turn negatively impacts the baby. The father, like I said, can also impact his child by excessively drinking or smoking before conception. This severely lowers sperm count, which makes it harder to conceive in the first place, and the sperm that is there can be abnormal, which can result in an abnormal child. So what can we do to help? What can we do to fix this and to limit these problems? First thing that we can do is provide support and resources. There are things like support groups out there already for people to be able to get help if they need it, to be able to stop drinking, to stop smoking if they want to reach out and get help. And while these are excellent resources, the problem is you're relying on people to actually reach out on their own and get help. And so if there's ways that we can proactively, before it even becomes an issue, to educate people, and that's why I would suggest building it into school courses. We are already required in middle school and high school to take mandatory health courses, and it would be very easy to build into these something about what you should and, more importantly, should not do during pregnancy. And this is especially important in an age where there's a lot more teenage pregnancy than there used to be. It's important for people to be educated, even at that young of an age, on what they can and cannot do in order to have a healthy pregnancy and a healthy child. The other way that we can reach a lot of people is through mass media like TV and the internet. When I was doing my research, I never found any specific rule for the amount of advertisements or things that are required to be informative, like infomercials and things. And so I came up with my own rule. I think it would be very practical and more than fair to require 1 in every 10 ads, or 1 minute out of every 10 minutes of ads, to be required to be informational. Something that gives information such as medicines, or important information about medicines and things, or like recalls, and also safe pregnancy information across to the general public. For my internship, I worked in the neonatal intensive care unit at UVA. UVA is a level 3 trauma center, meaning that they are highly equipped to deal with even the worst case patients. Hospitals, almost every hospital has some sort of nursery where they can take care of babies who are healthy or maybe only have minor problems. However, if a baby has a bigger problem and they need a lot of help, they get sent places like UVA, level 3 trauma centers, where they can get that more specialized care in space and things like that. And the way that they do that, there's something called NETS, which is Neonatal Emergency Transport Systems, and they would transport babies from other hospitals to UVA. My mentor, Aaron Anderegg, was actually the coordinator for NETS, and he not only got me a little bit of look into what they do in NETS, but he also set me up to go down and tour the NICU with a former nurse there and get to ask the nurses some questions and see the babies and get acquainted with the unit and everything. And through her, I also got set up with another nurse to come back and do a full 12-hour shift later on. I also worked with Dr. Elise Paget-Brown. She is a physician in the NICU at UVA, and so she was really helpful as far as getting in there and getting set up with the right people to get the best experience possible. And she was also the person that I did my interview with, so she was definitely a great source of information as well. So when going into the NICU for that 12-hour shift, I really was not expecting to be allowed to do much. The babies that you find in the NICU are in a very fragile state. Generally, in addition to any defects that they might have, they're generally born prematurely. They're really supposed to still be in their mom's womb. And so one thing they do while they're in the NICU is create an environment similar to the womb. They use incubators to keep it the right temperature. They cover it with blankets to keep it dark. And they keep it very quiet in the unit to keep it quiet like it would be in the womb. And messing with any of these things, even leaving the handholds on the incubator open for too long, or talking too loud, can throw off that very fine balance that they have to keep for these babies in order for them to do well. And so it's really hard for that. It's understandably hard for them to trust outsiders to come in and work with these fragile babies. The nurse that I did the 12-hour shift with, he actually surprised me a lot, though. He actually ended up letting me get a lot of hands-on with the babies, which was awesome. About every 2 hours, the babies that the nurse is taking care of need a feeding. They get their food. And every time that they feed the babies, there's an exam that goes with it. They take the baby's blood pressure, take his temperature, they change the diapers, they, there's one thing that they do. They make sure the head is still in the right position. They move the baby around because one thing is the head of the baby is very soft at that point in time, and so they have to move the head and keep it molded in the right way so that as the baby grows, their head doesn't have any misshapenness to it. And so they do all these things every time that they feed the baby. And what he did was the first few rounds that we ran around, he showed me what he did for me. And then after that, he actually ended up letting me do basically a full exam. I got to do about 5 of them. I got to change diapers and take blood pressures and temperatures and work a little bit with the moving of the baby around and everything. And so that was, even though I wasn't getting the full experience, it was really what it would actually be like working as a neonatal nurse in the unit. So that was really cool. While I was there, I also got to see 3 new babies admitted to the NICU. And while I didn't get any hands-on with that because it's a very rushed process with a lot of people coming in and doing a lot of things at once, I did get to talk to doctors who were coming in, specialized, ask them questions about what was going on, why they were doing what they were doing. And so that was also a really great learning experience. For my community service, I split it into 2 parts. The first part I did with the March of Dimes. I started out going to the Charlottesville chapter of the March of Dimes. However, I had a lot of problems getting events to go to plan, to be able to work at these events for various reasons. One being, there was at least one event where I could not work at it because at the time I wasn't 18 and any volunteer had to be 18. So what I ended up actually doing was going down on an even more local level, just within the hospital, and I worked with Courtney Swain, who is a March of Dimes champion who actually works in the NICU at UVA. And she was kind enough to let me come in and help them with a pancake breakfast that they were doing in the hospital to raise money for the March of Dimes. And so I went early on a Tuesday morning, and I helped them set up in the conference room, and then I made pancakes all day, and I got to talk to a lot of people from all over the hospital who were coming in to eat. We raised a good bit of money. I don't know the exact amount because in addition to a lot of people being there, there were some people who came back more than once, and there was at least one person who donated about $100 in addition to paying for their pancakes. So we did raise a good bit of money that day, and that was a really good feeling to know that I was raising money for such a great cause. And like I said, people from all over the hospital came in to eat, and so it was really cool to be able to talk to them about what they did in their job and hear them sharing stories and talking about their experience. So I got also a look into the rest of the hospital and what goes on there. For the second part of my community service, I worked with the Greene County Volunteer Rescue Squad. This year, there were 2 grants that provided Greene County school systems with crisis kits, one for each classroom in every school. And one crisis kits, the Greene County Rescue Squad was tasked with teaching the teachers how to use their crisis kits, what was in them, how they can use them, some basic first aid sort of skills. And they enlisted the help of cadet members, such as myself, to do that. So in addition to them having a lecture where they learned a little bit about the kit themselves, there was also some small group work where they broke off into groups and they worked with cadets or other members, and I got to show a small group of teachers how to use different supplies, how to tie a tourniquet, got a little bit of practice with triaging or sorting patients. And so that was a bit of a stretch for me because presenting is not the most comfortable thing for me, and teaching teachers is a little bit of a daunting thing. I'm not gonna lie about that. So that was a bit of that. It was also really cool to be able to teach people who normally teach me and share with them my knowledge and what I was doing and how I was applying my knowledge in the rescue squad. My legacy was through the Greene County Rescue Squad. Not every teacher was able to attend the presentations that we did. In order to still give the teachers who couldn't attend the same sort of class, the same sort of lecture on it, what I did was I took the PowerPoint that we used for the lecture and I adapted it to maximum learning through PowerPoint, edited some of the slides so they made more sense to somebody who wasn't there in person. I wrote out voiceovers and did that so it's like, basically they're still hearing the lecture and everything. I added in a video on how to do tourniquets because people who were there in person got to actually see a tourniquet tied and learn a little bit about that. So since they wouldn't be there in person, I put in a video on how to do it and voiced over that with step-by-step instructions. and also a triage exercise, so they actually got some practice triaging like we did in person. Looking back on this, the one thing that I think I would change, the biggest thing, was my whole issue with the community service with the March of Dimes. If I had figured that out sooner, that I was going to have an issue and started with Courtney, we would have gotten a lot more time with that and maybe done more events and maybe even tried to plan one of my own. And that would have been really awesome to do. So if I could redo it, I would probably try to do that. Advice I would give to incoming Burbank seniors is I would say don't procrastinate, but also pace yourself. There's a lot of senior year in addition to this project, like college. And what I found is that a lot of the deadlines tended to fall right on top of each other. And so there were times where I was super stressed because not only was I trying to meet a deadline for the project, but I was trying to meet deadlines for colleges and things like that. So I would suggest pacing yourself, looking ahead to that and thinking, how can I pace this out so it's the least stressful for me and so that I can enjoy myself? Because if you pick the right topic and you do the right thing, it's actually a very enjoyable experience. And that would be my other piece of advice, is to choose something that you enjoy doing, something that you're interested in. Because for me, I think what made this project so successful, such an awesome experience for me, was the fact that I was so interested in it. And that it was something that I'm going to be applying later on in real life. I'm planning to attend most likely UVA years, hopefully get a job, maybe even in the NICU at UVA, and be an ambulance.
I want to thank you for the work you did with the crisis kits, and I'm looking forward to seeing the presentation, so thank you for that. My question has to do with the premature babies.
Mm-hmm.
Did you look at all in terms of how they were born? And so were they induced? Was it natural childbirth? Was it cesarean in terms of how they came to that premature?
So generally you want to carry a baby to full term. The only time that I can think that you would induce prematurely would be if there's conflicting blood type between the baby and the mom. There's actually an issue where if the baby has a certain blood type and the mom has a conflicting blood type, that the mom's blood can actually attack the baby and cause problems. So that would be the only situation where I could think that you would want to prematurely induce labor. Other than that, sections, sometimes whatever defect they have means that you have to do a C-section. It can't be a natural birth. It just really depends on the situation. Generally, if they're premature, though, it's not because it's induced. It's something that, whatever the problem was, caused the mom to go into labor early. And then if they had to do a C-section, it was an emergency C-section because of the complications. Yes?
So you said that the father smoking can cause issues. Like the other aspects of like the drinking and drug usage, would that also affect? Or would that...
Yeah, excessive alcohol intake before conception, and also excessive drug use. In that case, generally misuse of drugs, like illegal or overdosing, taking drugs they're not supposed to be taking. That would be the biggest cause of problems there.
So yeah, I was thinking about your, early on you were talking about to build in some more awareness through classes or through public media, about, prenatal care and the impacts that, behaviors before pregnancy and before birth have. I'm just wondering about like the incentives for that from just even a cost standpoint. Do you think there would ever be a possibility like insurance companies might tie having to have, take particular classes or get particular knowledge before pregnancy might tie in? I mean, did you get any sense of how much that would save, in terms of both health and money? I
did not get any specific numbers on numbers that it would save, but things like that incentive, that would be sorry, that would be a really good idea actually too, because prenatal care is so important, for moms to, especially moms, but even dads too, to be educated on what's going on with their child and what's going to impact it and how is really important. And that's usually through classes is the way to do that. But you can't really force anybody to take a class. It's true. So things like incentives through insurance companies and things, that's actually a really good idea. I wish I thought of that, but I didn't.
Julie, where do you feel like you grew the most? through this experience?
Honestly, just because of the fact that I'm now absolutely positive that I want to be a neonatal nurse. When I walked into that unit, for the little cliche, but I knew it was the place for me the second I walked in. And so I was really nervous going in, actually, that I was going to go in there and it was going to completely turn me off to the idea of being a neonatal nurse, and then I'd be kind of like, well, what now? What do I do now? This is obviously not for me. Now where do I go? But that wasn't the case at all. It really did help me to decide and determine for sure that neonatal nursing is what I want to do. And it was really good feeling to be in there, knowing that I'm making a difference in these babies' lives and everything. Because if they don't get the care that they need, then their quality of life is not going to be great. That is, if they even do get to live, because defects can most definitely be deadly. So it was really good feeling to know that I was making a difference.
That is not cliche at all. That is real.
Good job.
Music.